A very warm welcome to my dear friends to UGC PG Pathshala. Myself, Professor Mary Tahir, Department of Geography, Jamia Millia Islamia, will now speak on historical explanations in geography, which is part of the paper Urban Geography. This has been written by Shibal Shabnam, Assistant Professor, Vidhan Nagar College, Kolkata. In this module, the learning objectives are as follows: to understand nature and development of historical geography, to inquire the different approaches to the study of historical geography, and what are the different sources of historical geography. First of all, we will go on to the introduction of this module. History of geography and historical geography are not synonymous. History of geography deals with the changing nature of geography, how the focus of the subject has shifted and evaluated from time to time with the emergence of new ideas. Historical geography, on the other hand, may be defined as the geography of the past. According to Clark, 1952, geography has many branches like social geography, physical, economic, political, etc. However, any geography of the past, be it cultural or plant, is historical geography. In this regard, historical geography is different from other branches of geography because it actually covers the whole realm of geography of past period. Therefore, controversy arises regarding the status of historical geography, whether it is a branch of geography or it is a separate field of study or it is simply history. Eva Smetonova 2002 has regarded historical geography as an independent, interdisciplinary, broader discipline which studies man-nature relationship, correlates time with space and combines social and physical sciences. Huntington, on the other hand, believed that historical geography laid more emphasis on history than geography. According to him, in historical geography, events of history were analyzed in terms of geographical context. Gülke, in his writings in 1982, also was of the opinion that historical geography should be considered as history. A large number of academicians do not agree with Gülke's viewpoint. As early as in the 18th century, Immanuel Kant described history and geography were different from other systematic sciences because, unlike other sciences, they study the unique or the particular. History is concerned with positioning of phenomena across time, that is chronological studies, and geography is concerned with the arrangements of phenomena across space, that is chorological studies. Following Kantian tradition, Kettner, Hartshorne emphasized that geography was chorological science and the central theme of geography was to study areal differentiation. It is the geography of the past that helps to understand the present unique geographical characteristics of an area and the geographical interpretation of phenomena of any region at a particular period of the past is regarded as historical geography. Therefore, historical geography cannot be equated with history. Darby differentiated historical geography from history by focusing on assembling sequences of cross sections to depict evolution of rural landscape. Hettner, Darby and others who believed that it is a branch of geography argued that geography is regarded as a spatial science and historical geography studies the spatial relations of phenomena of the past. We go on to the next section that deals with nature and development of historical geography. Examples of this study of historical events in their spatial context can be traced way back as early as the writings of Herodotus. The modern historical geography has been influenced by the writings of many historians of the 19th century, such as Thomas Arnold, whose famous History of Rome was published in 1838. During the first quarter of the 20th century, some works on historical geography was done at Chicago School by a number of American geographers. Johnston has identified three main phases of conceptual development of historical geography in Anglo-American world after the First World War. From 1930s till quantitative revolution. What happened during this period? During this period, historical geography and geomorphology were the most important branches of geography. We know that geomorphology is regarded as a science of landforms. Interestingly, historical geography of this period emphasized on cultural landscape. The most eminent cultural geographers of this period were Brown and Saar from North America and Darby from the Great Britain. In America, historical geography experienced a major thrust by the Berkeley School under the leadership of Carl Saar, and he and his associates embraced interdisciplinary studies with historians and anthropologists and focused on the generic study of landscapes, how cultural landscapes develop out of natural landscapes by human activities that continued for many generations. Both the works of Saar and Brown studied the sequences of settlements in many parts of North and South America. Their studies, particularly the work of the former, revealed that the same physical landscape might produce different cultural landscape due to cultural differences of the people of those regions. This indicates the influence of environmental possibilism in his work. The students of Saar, namely Parsons and Clark, continued to follow the tradition of reconstruction of cultural landscapes in geographical studies. In Britain, Darby's classic work on historical geography was published in a series of writings under the heading of Domesday Geographies of England. However, Darby did not follow the cultural landscape school. His focus was on cross-sectional analysis through time to describe the evolution of the rural landscape. He used cartographic techniques to reconstruct the past using the available materials. From the above discussion, it is very much clear that two different approaches prevailed in the study of historical geography after World War I, which continued for almost 4 decades. But both the approaches were more compelling when studied in regional context. The phase of quantitative revolution in 1960s and 1970s, what happened during this period? In 1940s and early 50s, some geographers expressed great dissatisfaction towards the chorological or regional paradigm of geography, which was more descriptive and focused on uniqueness of places as opposed to formulate general laws that are common in other fields of scientific inquiries. Schaeffer criticized this exceptionalist view of geography and argued that geographers should adopt the methodology of positivism to study spatial arrangement of phenomena on the earth's surface and seek to formulate theories and laws explaining the observed spatial distributions. To make the subject matter more precise and scientific, to formulate laws and models, geography shifted its perspective from ideographic to nomothetic and from description to analysis. Such transformation in the objectives and methodology of geography and the vigorous use of statistical and mathematical methods in this subject for testing hypotheses and building theories is known as quantitative revolution. The waves of quantitative revolution engulfed historical geography massively. The classical historical geography, which was ideographic in nature, lost its glory and found itself at the fringe of the subject. To regain the importance, some historical geographers started incorporating the mathematical and statistical techniques in their works and adopted interdisciplinary approach. Among them, to name a few, were Baker, who used the nearest neighbor analysis to find out settlement structure in the 19th century, especially rural France; Carter, who used the graph theory to search the dimensions of the ecumene in Serbia during the medieval period; and Carter, who used the central place theory to explain spatial organization of the urban system in northeast Wales in the 19th century. Now, the post-quantitative revolution phase since 1970s. The theories and models that emerged as a result of quantitative revolution were influenced by the doctrine of positivism, which only relies on objective reality rather than perceived reality. The overemphasis on quantification and systematic analysis of geographical phenomena, strongly criticized by some geographers, as a consequence, behavioral and humanistic and radical approaches were being introduced in geography. The growing discontent against quantitative revolution also led to the revival of historical geography. The new historical geography now incorporated quantitative methods with humanistic and an environmental approach. Baker in 1981 stated that historical geography should follow the humanist tradition of historical materialism. Humanist tradition puts emphasis on human consciousness and human activities. Historical materialism is a method introduced by Marx to interpret the development of human societies over time. Baker believed that historical geography should be concerned with social and economic history of a place and that period. Therefore, historical geography is nothing but historical explanation of geographical phenomena. Besides, the revival of traditional environmentalism in the post-quantitative revolution period led to an increasing cooperation between historical geographers and scholars of other disciplines. For example, paleobotanists, archaeologists, etc., for recreating cultural ecology of past landscapes. Now, we go on to the approaches to the study of historical geography. How we are going to study this? According to Smith, 1965, the study of historical geography has embraced 4 distinct approaches, which are the operation of the geographical factor in history. Number 2, the evolution of the cultural landscape. Next, the reconstruction of past geographies, and lastly, the study of geographical change over time. However, many studies of historical geography incorporated more than one approach. The operation of the geographical factor in history. Number 1, many studies of historical geography are based on geographical elements of a particular time. Carl Searle himself believed that the study of any region should be based on sequential arrangement of the previous geography. Reconstruction of past geographies is based on studying and classifying the geographical factors to understand the influence of the physical environment on man in the past period, and the human response to physical factors at different periods can even then help to formulate geographical laws. However, such type of works has been labeled by many as history rather than as geography. Next, we go on to the next approach, that is the evolution of the cultural landscape. According to this particular approach, historical geography deals with the changing cultural landscape of a region. The concept of cultural landscape was popularized by Carl. According to him, cultural landscape is a landscape developed by the transformation of the natural landscape. This transformation is done by the human community having particular cultural traits and preferences. The concept of changing cultural landscape is similar to that of sequential development of landforms. As geomorphologists study the processes that lead to the development of present landforms, similarly, historical geographers study the processes that are responsible for transforming the natural areas into cultural landforms. Smith has criticized this approach on the ground that it considers human beings as mere machines who only produce cultural landscape unemotionally. We go on to the next approach, that is reconstruction of past geographies. The reconstruction of past geographies helps us to understand the present geography, be it the agricultural or urban or industrial geography. This approach for the study of historical geography is based on the view that geography is a study of areal differentiation. So, it is essentially regional geography of the past period. To explain the present geography of the region, one need to study in detail the geography of the past periods. For example, to understand the present urban scenario of Venice, one needs to know the geography of Venice in the 15th century, which has been stated by Hartshorne in 1939. To put it in another way, the present particular characteristics of a region perhaps can be best explained by the situation of the certain period of past. In contrast to the view of Cultural Landscape School, Whittlesey in 1929 stated that the historical geographers should not study the processes of development, but focus on the interpretation of causal relationship of geographical phenomena of a fixed period. It is believed to be the most traditional view of historical geography. However, the study of the past picture of the present as the core of historical geography has also been criticized. According to Gulke, 1982, the geographical study of the past period comes under the realm of history. We go on to the next approach, that is the study of geographical change through time. According to this approach, each past period had its own present geography. This has been stated by Hartshorne in 1939. If historical geographers conduct comparative study of geographical phenomena through successive periods of time, then it is possible to depict the changing geography of an area. However, Mackinder argued that no distinction could be made between historical and contemporary geography, because historical geography dealt with historical present, and the present study of present geographic features would be regarded as historical geography in future. We go on to the next one, that is the next section deals with the sources of historical geography. According to Richard Hartshorne, the study of historical geography needs data and materials which are mostly historical, that is, which has been collected from the past. Although some scholars believe that it is the work of historians, Brown has pointed out that only the trained geographers could find out and analyze historical records of geographical materials. In this context, let us discuss the nature of the source materials of historical geography in India. Reconstruction of past geographies of ancient and medieval India is a serious problem, as there are paucities of materials and maps of this period. Therefore, it is a serious challenge to the geographers to find out the geographical information from the non-geographical accounts. In this regard, the geographers have to depend on the other sources, such as the religious texts. Religious and semi-religious texts of India provide some useful geographical contents of the past. Vedas, which were written about 1500 BC to back to 1000 BC, the Upanishads 800 BC to 500 BC, and Puranas, which is uncertain, contain more information about many regions of ancient India at different points of time. There are 4 Vedas and 18 Mahapuranas that help to get some picture of the land and people and dynasties of Puranic India. In his colossal work on the geography of Puranas, S.M. Ali in 1966 has revealed that the geographical information of various Puranas represented the gradual progress of geographical knowledge about Bharat and the world, India and the world. Rig Veda is full of information about flora, fauna and tribal communities. A classification of natural vegetation into trees, shrubs and grass, along with the characteristics of various plants, are clearly written in the Rig Veda. Important materials of human geography from the viewpoint of people's adjustment to environment through different forms of human activities, such as agriculture, irrigation, transport, settlement, diet, clothing, were highlighted in Rig Veda. The description of relief features in the later Vedic literature is better than in Rig Veda. From Vedas and Puranas, Ali has demonstrated how occupational specialization and caste system led to the change in the pattern of physical and cultural landscape. The next source, that is the epics and the literary sources. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata, 8th century BC to 480, are rich in geographical information, which was utilized by Das in 1894 and Dikshitar 1935. In Ramayana, important relief features of North India are described more or less accurately, but the given topographical characteristics of peninsular India are quite confusing. In the Bhishma Parva of Mahabharata, Sanjaya narrates the long list of countries, mountains and rivers of that period of India. The works of Kalidasa had also written by Law in 1954 and Gupta 1963 to find out further geographical information. Travel account is another source. Historical geographers depend heavily on the travel accounts to reconstruct past geographies. In the case of India, among the various travel accounts, the most important are the narratives of four travelers: Chinese pilgrims, Yuan Sang 7th century AD and Fahain 5th century AD, and medieval Arab travelers Al-Biruni and Ibn Battuta. Also important is the name of Megasthenes, who came to India at the end of the 3rd century BC. Between 16th to 18th centuries, many Europeans, Terry, Hilton, Hawkins, Carrari and others travelled vast parts of India. Through their writings are also important source of historical geography of that period. The description of Yuan Sang of then India was clearly given by Beale. Based on it, Cunningham in 1871 produced brilliant geographical account of Buddhist India. Similarly, the geographic content of the travel account of Ibn Battuta was described by Euler in 1874. The next source, dynastic archives and chronicles. Materials for historical geographies can also be gathered from court histories, chronicles and biographics. Raj Tarangini by Kalhana, 12th century AD, provides the history of the Kingdom of Kashmir, which is regarded as the first historical chronicle of India. Babarnama, Akbarnama, Jahangiri are all rich source of geographies of Mughal period. The work of Todd 1829 to 1832 provides valuable geographic information were based on genealogical rolls, poetic histories and other bardic literature. Next we go on to the revenue records, which are also the source. Agricultural statistics and other documents on revenue of late Mughal period are valuable resources for the reconstruction of agricultural geography of that period. Ain Akbari by Abul Fazl has been extensively used by many historians such as Morland and Irfan Habib. Materials on Mughal administration and revenue divisions were analyzed by geographer Raza in his series of studies on historical geography. Old maps are also a source. Diagrammatic representations of Puranic knowledge did exist in India, but they lacked the required cartographic techniques so as to be called as maps. Earliest maps of India can be traced back in the works of Greek and Roman scholars like that of Eratosthenes, Herodotus and Ptolemy, but their knowledge was not based on first-hand account. During the medieval period, Arab geographers provided huge materials of geographic information, but they were not good map makers. With the advent of European travelers from the 18th century, significant advancement was observed in the field of map making, that is cartography. Notable contributions in this field were made by Jeffreys 1768, Rennell and Thomas, and Rennell's Atlas of Bengal and Bihar and Kelly's Atlas of South India 1782 provided useful information about the regional geography of India. And which are the other sources of historical geography in India, which included military campaigns, temple records, etc. On the basis of the various sources described above, many studies on historical geography in India have been found. Most of them focused on the geomorphic and climatic change on one hand and the reconstruction of past geographies in the field of human geography. For example, urban geography on the other hand. Most of them focused on the geomorphic and climatic change on one hand and the reconstruction of the past geographies in the field of human geography. Thank you.